June 1944. Southern England lives under blackout. Windows are taped, streetlights dead, and every village road curves through bomb scars that still smell of damp brick and smoke. Private First Class Charles Normandy, U.S. Army medic, walks these roads in silence. He is 20 years old, Penobscot from Maine, trained to save lives, not to stare at ruins that look older than the war itself. Britain is supposed to be safe ground. Instead, it feels like a nation still bleeding. Shea trains with the 1st Infantry Division, preparing for an invasion no one names out loud. What shocks him is not British fear, but British discipline. Civilians queue calmly for rationed food. Tea is measured. Meat is rare. Children wear patched clothes. Britain has been at war since 1939, and it shows in every exhausted face. American soldiers arrive with fresh uniforms and full packs, and they quickly realize how much the British have already given and lost. Royal Air Force bombers pass overhead at night, engines low and steady, heading east. German V-1 threats are whispered about, but the real memory here is the Blitz. Londoners still sleep underground. Churches stand roofless. Shea notes how British medics teach efficiency under scarcity, how to treat burns with little morphine, how to improvise bandages from anything clean enough to hold blood. This is not training from manuals. This is knowledge earned under fire. In the camps, American equipment stacks high. Plasma bottles, sulfa powder, morphine syrettes. British officers study it quietly. There is no resentment, only urgency. Shea begins to understand the truth. The United States is arriving late to a war Britain has been surviving for years. Orders tighten. Training intensifies. Beach diagrams appear. Casualty estimates circulate without comment. Shea practices triage until his hands ache. He learns to ignore screams in drills because on the real beach, there will be too many. British officers brief the Americans on coastal defenses they have studied since. Dunkirk: concrete, wire, interlocking fire. Their voices carry no drama, only facts. On June 5th, the rain comes down hard. Ships wait in harbors packed so tightly the water barely moves. Shea boards a transport at night, watching England fade into shadow. He thinks of the ration lines, the bombed streets, the quiet resolve. Britain is not the powerful empire he imagined. It is something harder, worn down, unbroken. As the convoy turns toward the channel, seas roughen. Men vomit. Weapons are checked again and again. Shea grips his metic bag, knowing that by morning, everything he learned from Britain about endurance, about survival, will be tested in blood. The coast of France is still invisible, but the war is about to come rushing forward, fast and merciless. The channel heaves through the night, steel hulls slamming into black water. Dawn creeps in slowly, gray and cold, revealing lines of ships stretching to the horizon. Private First Class Charles Normandy stands on deck, boots slick with spray, stomach empty, mind fixed on procedures drilled into him in England. He does not look for glory. He counts bandages, morphine, plasma. Britain taught him this. Prepare before chaos erases choice. June 6, 1944. Omaha Beach. The name moves quietly through the ship. British briefings echo in his head. Tides, obstacles, killing zones. As landing craft lower, the calm British voices return to him, explaining German fire patterns. The way one explains weather, matter of fact, unemotional. Hit is how they survive the Blitz. The ramp drops. Machine gun fire rips the water apart. Men fall before Shea's boots touch sand. The sea turns dark with fuel and blood. He wades forward anyway, hunched low. Medic armband visible, knowing it means nothing here. British instructors warn them medics die first on beaches. Shea keeps moving. Wounded men pile up behind steel obstacles. Some scream, some are silent. Shea works by instinct, dragging bodies above the surf, injecting morphine, applying sulfa, tying off bleeding limbs. German fire comes from the bluffs, relentless and precise. This is not chaos. This is preparation, enemy preparation, learned from years of defending Europe against invasion. British naval guns thunder offshore, shells screaming overhead. Shea remembers English villages flattened by Luftwaffe bombs, remembers British calm under fire. That memory steadies his hands now. He treats a soldier with half his face torn away, another with shattered legs. He does not ask names. He does not pause. Hours blur. The beach fills with wreckage, burning tanks, smashed landing craft, bodies tangled in wire. Shea moves again and again into open fire to pull men back. No heroics, just necessity. He has seen what happens when civilians have nowhere to run. England showed him that survival is endurance, not speed. By late morning, American troops begin clawing their way off the sand, up the bluffs. Shea keeps working below, where the wounded still come faster than he can treat them. German fire slackens, then shifts inland. The beach is technically secured, but the cost is everywhere around him. As afternoon light breaks through smoke, Shay finally looks up from a body he cannot save. The channel behind him is filled with ships, endless and unstoppable. Ahead, Normandy burns. He realizes something Britain taught him without words. Winning does not feel like victory when you are standing among the dead. And the day is far from over. Smoke hangs low over Omaha as the tide pulls back, exposing what the morning hid. The wounded lie where they fell, waiting, watching medics move between bodies, with the slow urgency of men who know there will never be enough time. Private First Class Charles Norman Shay keeps going. His arms shake. His throat burns from salt and cordite. He does not stop. The beach is no longer under constant fire, but danger remains. German artillery lands in scattered bursts inland, shells whining down without warning. Shay drags a wounded infantryman into a shallow crater and works. Quickly bandage, sulfa, morphine. Mark the forehead. Alive. Move on. The method comes straight from British casualty drills, refined during years of air raids when every second mattered. Makeshift aid stations form behind the shingle. Wounded men are stacked side by side, some pleading for water, some staring blankly at the sky. Shay moves through them, ignoring his own bleeding hands. British medical officers warn him. Once shock sets in, words mean nothing, only action. By mid-afternoon, engineers blow gaps in the seawall. Supply parties push inland. Shay finally steps off the open sand, following the wounded toward cover. The smell changes from salt and fuel to crushed grass and burned earth. Normandy hedgerows rise ahead, thick and deceptive. British briefings described them as natural fortresses. Now Shay sees why. A German shell lands nearby, throwing dirt and stone. Shay hits the ground, then crawls toward another wounded man screaming from the edge of a field. He reaches him, applies a tourniquet, and feels the pulse fade under his fingers. There is nothing more to do. Shay closes the man's eyes and moves on. As evening approaches, rain begins again. The same cold rain England knew so well. Shay works in it, soaked, exhausted, guided only by instinct. The British taught him that war does not pause for weather or fatigue. It simply continues. Ambulance routes are chaotic. Roads are choked with traffic tanks, trucks, prisoners, wounded. Shay helps load casualties onto jeeps bound for the beach. He watches men he treated disappear toward ships he cannot see. Some will live, many will not. Night falls without ceremony. No victory speeches, no relief, only darkness and the sound of distant fighting inland. Shay finds a brief moment behind a hedgerow, sits, and finally feels his legs fail. He thinks of England again, of quiet civilians under bombs, of calm voices explaining how to survive impossible nights. Then a flare rises over the fields ahead, white light freezing everything in place. The battle for Normandy is just beginning, and Shay is already running out of strength. The flare burns out, and darkness folds back over the fields. Somewhere ahead, German machine guns chatter in short bursts, probing the night. Private First Class Charles Norman Shay pushes himself up and moves again. There is no rear area here, only degrees of danger. Normandy at night feels tighter than the open beach, the hedgerows closing in like walls. Wounded men keep arriving, guided by whispers and hands on shoulders. Shay works by touch more than sight. He feels for pulses, for warmth, for breath. British medics once told him the night is when panic spreads fastest. Keep your voice low. Keep your movements steady. Fear listens. Shay follows that lesson now, speaking calmly even when he knows a wound is fatal. German artillery resumes after midnight. Shells land among the fields and lanes, shaking earth loose from the hedgerows. Shay crawls between casualties as dirt rains down, using his own body as cover when he has nothing else. There is no heroism in it, only the refusal to abandon someone who is still breathing. At first light on June 7th, the scale of the battlefield becomes clear. Bodies lie tangled in brush, uniforms soaked dark. The wounded outnumber the medics. Shay has been awake for more than 30 hours. His hands cramp as he tightens another bandage. He remembers British doctors describing the Blitz. Mornings walking streets at dawn to count who survived the night. This feels the same. American units push deeper inland, clearing one hedgerow at a time. Each advance brings more casualties back through the narrow lanes. Shay helps establish a more permanent aid station inside a shattered farmhouse. The roof is gone, light pours in, so does dust and smoke. The British taught them to use ruins. They offer cover, not comfort. German snipers fire intermittently. A bullet snaps through a window frame, close enough for Shay to feel the air move. No one reacts. There is no energy left for flinching. He treats a paratrooper with shrapnel in his abdomen. Knowing evacuation may come too late, he marks the man and moves on. By afternoon, exhaustion turns dangerous. Shay catches himself forgetting steps, nearly skipping sulfa, nearly missing a pulse. He forces himself to slow down. British discipline again, haste kills as surely as bullets. As evening approaches, rain returns, turning paths into mud. Litter teams struggle. The wounded wait longer. Shay looks out across the fields toward the unseen front line. The sounds of fighting grow heavier, closer. This is no beachhead anymore. This is a foothold being fought over inch by inch. When night falls again, Shay realizes with a quiet shock that this war, this grinding, unrelenting pressure is exactly what Britain has lived with for years. Morning comes without clarity. The hedgerows still block the horizon, turning every field into a separate battlefield. Private First Class Charles Norman Shay wakes where he last collapsed. Boots still on, Nedic bag clutched to his chest. There is no sense of a new day, only continuation. Britain warned them about this. War does not reset overnight. The fighting intensifies as American units push toward the villages beyond Omaha. German defenses are layered, patient, designed to bleed momentum. Casualties arrive faster now, many hit by mortar fire hidden behind hedges. Shay treats chest wounds, abdominal wounds, traumatic amputations. He works knowing evacuation routes are stretched thin. Some men will wait too long. A British liaison officer moves through the aid station briefly, exchanging clipped updates. Shay notices how calm he remains under shellfire, how routine this chaos seems to him. Britain has lived this way under bombardment, under threat for nearly 5 years. For Americans, this is still a shock. A German counterattack strikes just before noon. Machine gun fire rakes a nearby lane. Wounded men flood in, carried, dragged, stumbling. Shay abandons cover repeatedly, sprinting into fire to pull men back. A bullet snaps past his shoulder. Another punches into the dirt at his feet. He does not stop. There is no calculation left, only motion. The farmhouse aid station becomes overwhelmed. Blood pools on the floor. Morphine runs low. Plasma is rationed. British medical lessons echo again. Decide fast who can be saved. Shay marks some men and moves on, knowing the marks mean they may never leave this field alive. It is the hardest thing he has ever done. By mid-afternoon, the counterattack is broken, but the cost is staggering. Bodies lie where hedgerows meet open ground, the green darkened by blood. Shay helps move the wounded to a new position farther inland as artillery zeroes in on the farmhouse. As they leave, a shell collapses part of the structure. The station they fought to keep disappears behind smoke. The new aid point is little more than a ditch reinforced with planks. Shay works there as dusk approaches, hands numb, mind narrowing. He hears British artillery supporting the advance somewhere to the left. Deep, steady thunder. Allied coordination is growing, but the enemy is not retreating easily. As darkness falls, German flares light the sky again. Shay looks up briefly, faces illuminated white against mud and blood. He understands now what Britain endured alone in 1,940 nights, when survival depended on refusing to break. The firing intensifies once more, and Shay braces himself for another night that will not end quietly. The night shudders under artillery. Explosions ripple across the hedgerows, flashes lighting the low clouds from beneath. Private First Class Charles Norman Shay works in the ditch by feel, hands moving automatically as another wounded man is lowered beside him. There is no counting time anymore, only the rhythm of pain and response. German mortar fall closer now. Dirt and splinters rain into the trench. Shay presses himself over a casualty as a blast lands nearby, his body the only cover available. British instructors once described this exact moment how Londoners lay flat in tube stations while bombs collapse streets above them. Survival is proximity. Stay low, stay still, then move. By early morning, June 8th, the front line has shifted again. The wounded arrive from farther inland. Men caught in hedgerow ambushes and close quarter fights where grenades do most of the killing. Shay treats burns, shrapnel wounds, crushed limbs. He smells burned explosives and blood so constantly he no longer notices. Evacuation improves slightly as engineers clear roads, but it is still slow. Shay watches ambulances disappear into lanes, knowing artillery can find them at any moment. He sends men away with a squeeze of the hand, the only goodbye possible. A British medical truck arrives with supplies, bandages, plasma, precious morphine. The driver barely speaks. He unloads and leaves under fire without complaint. Shay understands now what American troops could not believe about Britain. Not the ruins, not the rationing, but the endurance. The way exhaustion becomes normal. Midday heat replaces the rain. The ditch stinks. Flies gather. Shay forces himself to drink water, to stay sharp. He remembers British warnings about dehydration under stress. Small failures lead to death. A sudden German artillery barrage slams into the area. The ditch partially collapses. Shay digs himself free and pulls another man with him, coughing, ears ringing. The ground trembles again. This is not a breakthrough battle, it is a grinding one, designed to wear bodies and minds down. As evening approaches, orders come to push the aid station forward again. The advance is slow but steady. Shay walks behind the infantry, already working as casualties fall almost immediately. The hedgerows ahead are darker, thicker. Normandy offers no clear lines, no clean victories. As night falls for the third time since landing, Shay feels something dangerous creeping in, not fear, but numbness. Britain warned them about that too. When the noise fades, the quiet can break you. In the distance, guns thunder on, and Shay keeps moving, knowing the worst part of the campaign may still be ahead. The fourth morning arrives gray and heavy, the air thick with smoke and damp earth. Private First Class Charles Norman Shay barely registers the sunrise. His body moves before his mind catches up. Boots sink into mud, hands reach for bandages. Another man is already calling for help. The fight has pushed deeper into the Norman countryside, but the hedgerows remain unbroken walls. Every field is a trap. German troops fire from holes cut into the banks, from positions invisible until they erupt. Casualties spike again. Shay treats men hit at 10 yards, rifle rounds tearing through muscle, grenades shredding bodies where there was no room to run. British artillery pounds suspected positions, but the Germans adapt quickly. Shay sees the result in the wounded brought back, fragment wounds from tree bursts, concussions from near misses. Britain warned them about this kind of war. Not sweeping advances, attrition, pressure without relief. A temporary aid station is set up along a sunken road. Shay works there, as shells crack overhead, the road acting like a funnel for blast and debris. He drags a wounded officer into a drainage culvert and treats him in knee-deep water, hands numb from cold. The officer survives. Many others do not. By midday, word spreads that progress is slow everywhere. Normandy is resisting. Shay hears soldiers mutter disbelief, not at German strength, but at how much Britain endured alone before America arrived. Months of bombing, years of rationing, endless casualties. This grinding misery is what Britain carried until help came. The wounded keep coming. Shay's supplies shrink again. Morphine is nearly gone. He begins using it only for the worst pain, leaving others to bite down on straps or scream. British medics once told him pain can be survived. Blood loss cannot. A sniper hits a litter bearer just yards from the station. Shay sprints out, ignoring shouted warnings. He pulls the man back by his webbing, bullets snapping overhead. The wound is fatal. Shay stays anyway until the breathing stops. Then he moves on. There is no time to grieve. As afternoon fades, rain returns in sheets, soaking bandages, turning the road into slurry. Evacuation halts briefly. The wounded pile up. Shay works until his vision narrows, forcing himself to focus on the next task, the next life. Night approaches again, and the firing does not slow. Flares rise. Machine guns chatter. The hedgerows glow and disappear. Shay realizes this campaign will not be decided in days. It will be decided by who can endure the longest. Sleep comes in fragments, stolen minutes between bursts of fire. When it ends, it does not feel like waking, only being pulled back into motion. Private First Class Charles Norman Shay rises again, joints stiff, uniform crusted with mud and blood that is no longer his alone. The campaign grinds on. The Americans are still fighting for yards, not miles. The hedgerows resist every advance, forcing infantry into close, brutal engagements. Shay treats men hit by grenades thrown blind over earthen banks, by machine guns firing from unseen angles. British briefings warned that Normandy would not break quickly. Now that warning feels understated. A new aid station forms in a shallow orchard, trees stripped and splintered by shellfire. Shay works beneath branches shattered into spears. Every explosion sends wood fragments raining down. He shields faces, presses bandages, listens for breathing amid the noise. German artillery shifts fire methodically, walking shells closer. The orchard becomes untenable. Shay helps move the wounded again, carrying stretchers through mud that sucks at boots. He slips once, nearly dropping a man whose leg is gone below the knee. They keep moving. By midday, British armor is heard somewhere to the flank engines low. Deliberate, the sound steadies nerves. Allied coordination is improving, but the price continues to rise. Shay sees men from units that landed days earlier now reduced to handfuls. The war is consuming them in pieces. A brief lull settles in the afternoon. Shay uses it to clean wounds properly for the first time in days. He washes blood away, removes debris, applies fresh dressings. It feels almost peaceful until a sudden barrage shatters the calm. The wounded cry out as the ground convulses. One shell lands close enough to throw Shea against a tree. His ears ring. Vision blurs. He forces himself back up and keeps working. British medics once said you don't know you're hurt until the war allows you to stop. Shea does not stop. As evening comes, orders arrive to prepare for another push. More fighting. More wounded. The orchard is abandoned. Fires burn on the horizon, marking villages not yet taken. Shea watches the light fade and thinks of England again, not of safety, but of stubborn survival under constant threat. Night descends, heavy and loud, and Shea steps forward once more, into another stretch of darkness he cannot see through. The darkness presses in close, broken only by the brief white bloom of flares and the dull red glow of fires ahead. Private First Class Charles Norman Shea moves with the column. Bent low, senses dulled by exhaustion but sharpened by habit. Normandy does not allow hesitation. The push begins before dawn. Infantry slips through gaps blasted into hedgerows, advancing a few yards at a time. Almost immediately, men go down. Shea is at their side, working in the open as machine gun fire snaps across the fields. The wounds are savage point-blank hits, shrapnel driven deep by blast. He treats what he can and signals evacuation for the rest. A German mortar team finds the advance route. Rounds walk closer with terrifying precision. Shea and a litter team dive into a ditch as a shell detonates, throwing mud and metal through the air. When he climbs out, one of the bearers is bleeding heavily. Shea works fast, hands slippery, breath controlled. The man lives for now. By mid-morning, the Americans secure another line of hedgerows. It is not a breakthrough. It is a rearrangement of suffering. Shea helps establish yet another forward aid point. This one exposed, little more than a fold in the ground. He knows it will not last. British artillery and naval guns support the advance when they can. The deep thunder of heavy shells rolling inland from the coast. Shea recognizes the sound from England, steady, relentless, designed to wear an enemy down over time. It is Britain's kind of war. The wounded keep arriving. Shea notices how many are barely out of their teens. He treats them without comment, without promise. His voice stays calm even when the situation is not. Britain taught him that panic spreads faster than shrapnel. In the afternoon, a sudden counter-barrage crashed down. The aid point takes a direct hit nearby. Shea is thrown to the ground, vision flashing white. When it clears, he drags himself to the nearest casualty and starts again. The ground is shaking. He cannot hear his own voice. As evening nears, the firing slows but does not stop. The front holds for now. Shea sits briefly, back against earth, and realizes he cannot remember when he last slept properly. He thinks again of Britain in 1940, standing alone through nights like this, unsure if morning would come. Flares rise once more, lighting the hedgerows in stark white. The fighting will resume before dawn. Shea tightens his grip on his medic bag. There is one more day ahead, and it may be the hardest yet. Dawn breaks slowly, almost reluctantly, over the hedgerows. The light reveals ground that looks chewed apart, earth torn open. Trees splintered, bodies lying where night ended. Private First Class Charles Norman Shea stands and feels the weight of it all settle into his bones. This is the morning Britain always spoke about. The one after survival, when you count what remains. The final push of this phase begins without ceremony. Infantry moves forward again, rifles up, eyes scanning every bank and shadow. Shea follows close, already working. A man collapses with a chest wound. Shea seals it. Another screams with a shattered arm. Shea splints it and sends him back. The process is relentless, mechanical, necessary. German resistance weakens unevenly, fierce in pockets, absent in others. Shea sees signs of withdrawal, abandoned weapons, hastily dug positions, but the danger does not fade. A last mortar barrage lands suddenly, claiming more wounded just as hope flickers. Shea moves into the open once more, dragging a casualty into cover as fragments tear through the grass. By late morning, the firing thins. The front line stabilizes. Normandy is not won, but it is held. Shea finally stops moving when there is no one left immediately calling for help. The silence feels wrong. He looks around and sees medics sitting where they fall, heads down, hands shaking. Evacuation finally catches up. Trucks and ambulances move steadily now. Shea watches men he treated days ago loaded aboard, pale but breathing. Others are carried past him under ponchos. He does not ask which are which. In a quiet moment, Shea washes his hands in a helmet filled with water. The blood swirls away, but the smell does not leave. He thinks again of Britain, of bombed streets, ration lines, calm voices under fire. Now he understands completely what U.S. troops could not believe before landing. Britain endured this kind of war for years, not days, not weeks, years. The campaign will continue. More battles will come. But this first brutal test has changed him. Shay shoulders his metic bag again as new orders come down the line. There is no finish here, only continuation. The guns rumble faintly in the distance.